Michael, a 40-year-old marketing executive, and his wife, Rita, 35, have been longing for a break from their hectic city life. Together with their children, 12-year-old Anita and 9-year-old John, they plan a peaceful weekend in the woods. After a long drive, they arrive at an isolated rustic cabin deep within the forest. The cabin, though worn and old, seems charming and quiet, a perfect escape from the stress of urban living. The dense trees and natural surroundings add to the allure. As they settle in, the family is excited to explore the forest and spend quality time together. The first day is filled with laughter, games, and the warmth of a campfire under the stars. But as night falls, an eerie silence descends over the cabin. The family, unaware of the impending horror, goes to bed, expecting a night of restful sleep. However, the cabin's creaking floors and strange noises outside hint at something sinister lurking in the shadows. What was meant to be a weekend of relaxation slowly begins to unravel into a nightmare as the true nature of the cabin reveals itself. The first night in the cabin, the family begins to notice strange occurrences. It starts with subtle, almost unnoticeable events. A picture frame falls off the wall without reason, lights flicker briefly, and the temperature inside the cabin drops unexpectedly. Rita dismisses it as the quirks of an old house, but Anita feels uneasy. She hears soft whispers coming from the woods, barely audible yet chilling, as if someone or something is trying to communicate. Michael, ever the skeptic, reassures everyone that it's just their imagination playing tricks in an unfamiliar environment. But as the night progresses, the disturbances grow more unsettling. Objects that were neatly placed are found in disarray. Doors that were closed are suddenly wide open, and the air inside the cabin becomes thick with a sense of foreboding. The children, especially John, become frightened. He clings to his parents, insisting that he saw a shadowy figure moving outside the window. The family's initial excitement begins to wane as they realize they are not alone. The cabin, once a symbol of tranquility, starts to feel like a trap, closing in around them with each passing moment. In the dead of night, Anita is jolted awake by a cold, unnatural sensation on her shoulder. She opens her eyes and is paralyzed by fear. Standing at the foot of her bed is a ghostly figure, a woman with hollow eyes, her face twisted in sorrow and rage. The figure is dressed in tattered clothing from a bygone era, and her presence exudes a malevolent energy. Anita's heart races, but she is too terrified to scream. The apparition's gaze is fixed on her, and for a moment time seems to stand still. Just as Anita musters the courage to scream, the figure vanishes into thin air, leaving behind an icy chill in the room. Her scream finally escapes her lips, piercing the night and waking the entire family. Michael and Rita rush into Anita's room, finding her trembling and sobbing uncontrollably. Between gasps, she describes the ghostly woman she saw, but Michael is still reluctant to believe it was anything more than a nightmare. However, Rita senses that something is terribly wrong. The fear in Anita's eyes is too real, and the atmosphere in the cabin is thick with dread. The family huddles together, too scared to go back to sleep. The following morning, the family tries to shake off the previous night's terror. Michael insists they spend the day outside to clear their minds. They venture into the forest, hoping that fresh air and daylight will dispel the unease. However, as they explore the woods, John begins to hear strange whispers. The voices seem to be calling his name, luring him deeper into the forest. At first, he thinks it's just the wind, but the voices grow more persistent, almost pleading. Entranced, John starts to wander away from the group, moving towards the source of the whispers. When Michael and Rita notice John's absence, they frantically search for him. They find him standing still, staring at a large, gnarled tree with wide, unblinking eyes. When they reach him, he seems dazed, as if in a trance. It takes several moments for him to respond to their voices. When he does, he tells them he saw the woman from Anita's room, standing by the tree, her ghostly figure blending into the shadows. Michael and Rita are shaken, realizing that the haunting is not confined to the cabin. The entire forest seems to be under the spirit's influence, and they are powerless to escape it. The family, now deeply disturbed by the strange events, decides to cut their trip short and leave the cabin immediately. However, when they try to open the front door, it won't budge. Michael uses all his strength, but the door seems stuck, as if an invisible force is holding it shut. Panicking, they try the windows, but they are sealed tight. The air inside the cabin grows thick, almost suffocating, and an overwhelming sense of dread fills the space. It's as if the cabin itself is alive, determined to keep them inside. The family starts to panic, realizing they are trapped. The once cozy cabin has transformed into a prison with no way out. The oppressive atmosphere weighs heavily on them, and they begin to feel the presence of the ghost more intensely. It's as if she's watching them, feeding off their fear. The children are terrified, clinging to their parents as they desperately search for an escape. But every attempt to leave is thwarted. The cabin, which had initially seemed like a refuge, has become a menacing entity, and the family is at its mercy. They are forced to confront the reality that they might never leave this place alive. As the family's fear reaches its peak, Rita suddenly collapses, overcome by a vivid and terrifying vision. In her mind's eye, she is transported back in time to a moment of great sorrow and pain. She sees the cabin as it was many years ago, filled with life, but also deep despair. The ghost, once a woman full of hope, is revealed to have suffered a tragic fate. Abandoned and betrayed, she had taken her own life in the very cabin the family now occupies. Her soul, filled with anger and sadness, has been trapped here ever since, unable to find peace. Rita feels the intensity of the ghost's emotions, her grief, her rage, and her desire for revenge. When the vision ends, Rita is left gasping on the floor, tears streaming down her face. She understands now that the ghost is not merely trying to scare them, she is demanding recognition of her pain. Rita explains the vision to Michael, realizing that appeasing the spirit may be their only hope of survival. The ghost is seeking closure, and the family must find a way to help her move on, or they will never escape the cabin alive. Determined to protect his family, Michael searches the cabin for anything that might help them understand the ghost's torment. In a dusty corner of the attic, he discovers an old, weathered diary. The pages are fragile, but the words within tell the tragic story of the ghost. A woman named Eliza, who had once lived in the cabin with her husband. The diary reveals how her husband betrayed her, leading to her tragic death. Consumed by grief and anger, Eliza's spirit became trapped in the cabin, unable to move on. As Michael reads the final heart-wrenching entries, he realizes that the ghost is not evil by nature, but tormented and lost. He shares the story with Rita, and they decide to perform a ritual of forgiveness and release, hoping to free Eliza's spirit. Michael gathers the family, explaining what they must do. Despite their fear, they are united in their resolve to end the haunting. As they prepare for the ritual, the atmosphere in the cabin grows even more oppressive. The ghost, sensing their intentions, becomes more active, and the family knows they are in a race against time to save themselves. The family gathers in the cabin's main room, holding hands and following the instructions Michael found in the diary. They begin the ritual, speaking words of forgiveness and release, calling out to Eliza's spirit. At first, nothing happens, but then the cabin begins to shake violently. The temperature drops and the lights flicker. The walls seem to close in on them, bleeding and groaning as if in pain. The ghost appears before them, her face a twisted mask of rage and sorrow. She resists their efforts, lashing out with a terrifying force that threatens to overwhelm them. The family struggles to keep their composure, repeating the ritual words even as the ghost's fury intensifies. Objects fly across the room, and a deafening roar fills the air. It feels as if the very foundations of the cabin are about to collapse. Just when they think they can't hold on any longer, the ghost lets out a final agonizing scream. The shaking stops, and the cabin falls silent. Eliza's spirit, finally at peace, fades away. The family is left trembling, exhausted, but alive. They have succeeded, but the experience has left them deeply scarred. The moment Eliza's spirit is appeased, the oppressive atmosphere in the cabin lifts. The front door creaks open, and the family, still shaking from the ordeal, wastes no time in fleeing the cabin. As they step outside,